Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Woodpeckers Deep Dive. My name is Jeff Farris. Welcome to the Woodpeckers Model Shop. Today, we're going to take a closer look at Woodpeckers' new SkillSquares, and we're going to do a 2-for-1. Not only are we going to look at the SkillSquares, we're going to look at our new Stair Gauges. Why are we doing two at once? Well, because these are peanut butter and jelly. Each one is great by itself, but they're even better when they're together. All right, let's get started. I want to start out today by answering some questions that we've had on our customer service line and on social media. And the number one question is, what's the difference between the four different models? Well, we have two different materials for the beam, and then there are two different designs. Let's take a look at the designs first and the difference between those two. So there's the SkillSquare Original and the SkillSquare XT. And the difference is this scale right here. The XT model has an extra scale built on the outside of the beam. Now, why do you need that? Well, with the standard model, to get the ruler flat on your work, you have to be at the end of the board. There's no way that you can use this scale out here in the middle. But the XT gives you a second scale, so we can still use it just like this, referencing off the end of the board and using this scale. But if we need to work in the middle of our board, the second scale will sit perfectly flat and allow you to take a reference from any point. Now we're going to talk about the two different materials in the beam. So we have anodized aluminum, very familiar to anybody that works with Woodpeckers tools. And then this one is the newest model. This is the recently introduced version with a solid phenolic beam. Now that solid phenolic beam has a really great feature, and that is it's nearly indestructible. This is excellent when we're working on the job site. This can stand up to the rigors of being around a construction site, falling off the second story, anything else that's going to happen to something that you've got on the job site, that phenolic can stand up to it. On the other hand, if you're working primarily in a shop, the red aluminum is a great choice, and it'll match all the rest of your Woodpeckers collection. Now, we also had a couple of questions about the stair gauges, so let's take a look at that. Now, the first question that we had about the stair gauges is, why are there two sizes? When do you want one and when do you want the other? Well, the difference is about a half an inch. The standard stair gauge, the operating side of it is 1/4 of an inch deep. And on the long ones, it's 3/4 of an inch. Why do you need that extra half inch? Well, let's take a look at a lumberyard 2x6. Now, the standard stair gauge design that's been around for over 100 years has about 1/4 of an inch on the reference side of it. When you're working with material that's been machined in your shop, that'll work out just fine. But if you're working with dimension lumber, you can have a problem. You can see right here, a 2x6 straight from the hardware store, your stop is going to hit that wane and go right up over that edge, and you're not going to get an accurate reading. Instead, we're going to take the deep unit that has 3/4 of an inch, we'll set that up on 40 degrees, lock it up, and now when we go to line this up, it's going to reach all the way down to the center of the board, and you're going to have an accurate angle setting. So that's why there are two depths. Well, okay, why not just have the long one? Well, let's take a look at what happens when we're working with one of our little delve squares and a piece of machine stock. So if the 3/4 inch option was all we had and we were working with thin plywood, we'd be in trouble because the stair gauge is just too deep. Of course, you could always come to the edge of the stock and that would work, except the whole thing is a little out of balance because the stair gauge is almost as big as the square we're using. So let's take a look at the little one. So if I take the little stair gauge now and set that up at 40 degrees, now everything's balanced. It's matched to the size of the square, and it doesn't matter whether we're hanging off the edge of the bench we can slide this and work over top of the table. We have perfect access to everything. That's why there are two different sizes. We also had some people ask us about the brass screw and if that was going to have an effect on their squares. So the one that is the most likely to have a problem is the delve that is all aluminum. And we can get in here tight and take a look, and you'll see that in the war between brass and anodized aluminum wins. We're actually getting a little bit of brass material on there, but you know what? Just one finger wipe and it's completely gone. The anodized aluminum surface is actually just a little bit harder than the brass. You won't have any problems with contact between them. Now, let's make that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm going to show you how to use any of our triangular squares, Delve Square or SkillSquare, with the stair gauge to set an angle. Now, with any of our carpenter squares, angle setting is basically bringing the pivot point, which is right here, bring that against your stock, and then pivot it out, and you're setting the angle here, right? So that is set up at a 15-degree angle. And then, of course, we also can set that up right there. That is a 312 rafter pitch. And that is a 412 hip and valley pitch. So whatever type of angle setting you need, you've got them right there. We're just lining that up with the edge of the stock. Now, if you're doing one angle, you can kind of do it just like that. It's when you want to do more than one of these 20-degree angles, that is when the stair gauge comes in handy. Because what we're going to do is take our stair gauge, slide it on here, and we're going to move the edge of the stair gauge until it's right at our 20-degree point, and then lock it up. Now, you can see it's perfectly lined up with our 20-degree mark right at the edge of the material. And we'll go ahead. Now, the beauty of the stair gauge is we can just keep doing that. As many times as we need that 20-degree angle, all we have to do is keep moving down the board. And all of those angles are going to be exactly in line. Now, everything is the same if we're using any of the 3 delve squares, okay? It's just the scale's a little smaller, but it's doing exactly the same thing. Now we'll lock that up with it right on the 40-degree line, bring it down, pivot point against the stock and the stair gauge against the stock, and your angle is right on the money every single time. Just a couple more features about the SkillSquares that I want to show to you before we wrap up today. Now, I love the scribing guides in the delve squares, saddle tees, and pocket tees. They're 1mm holes. You can drop the tip of a mechanical pencil in there and scribe a perfectly straight line exactly parallel with the edge of the stock. It's a great feature until you want to do that with a regular pencil, and it just won't work. If you're in a controlled environment like your workshop, that's probably not a big deal. Sometimes on the job site, though, you don't have your choice to carry a super fine tip mechanical pencil. That's why we made the scribing guides in the SkillSquare just a little bit different. They're a triangular cutout, and in that, you have a lot more options on what you can draw with. A standard wooden pencil fits in there. Even a permanent marker will fit down in there and give you a perfect parallel line. So as you can see, you have a lot more options if you're out in the field when you're working with the SkillSquare. Hey folks, I hope you enjoyed the show today. If you did, be sure and give us a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, be sure and subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. That way you'll know about every one of our great videos right when they come out. Now, if you'd like to know more about the SkillSquares, there's a link right over here to the product video, also one for the stair gauges, and there are links down below that'll take you straight to the web pages. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Woodpeckers Deep Dive.